Okay, so I think we will start the show, the conversation because we will wait for people to join later, and whoever's missed the first part, we'll definitely send a recording. So today's discussion is about the Union Budget 26-27 in the context of the national economic scenario and how our nation's economy has been growing from strength to strength the last so many years of this government. Before we start the session, and I mean before I get into the national economic scenario and the union budget of what's in it for us from the union budget, good evening to all of you. Namaskar. And so let's start with the basic idea of economics. Many people have told me that they don't understand the basics of economics. So for those who don't understand, for those who are more literate than me, then forgive me if these are basics. But the definition of the fundamental thing that we need to see in any economy is about demand and supply. I'm sure all of you must have seen that famous curve of demand and supply, and the curves show that the two have to meet at a certain point. So every economy runs in this balance between demand and supply. So when demand rises and supply responds efficiently and growth is stable, that's when the economy is doing well. But when supply is constrained due to certain situations like a war situation, or when there is during COVID, you remember there were hoardings or people were hoarding goods. So that when the supply is, there's a future fear of anticipated fear of supply being constrained, people hoarding goods. So then the prices rise and then inflation comes into being. So inflation, high inflation is never good for any economy. But when the demand weakens, also there is a problem. Production slows down, jobs weaken, and income slows. So a good budget is not just about spending money, it is about shaping demand, it's about strengthening the supply and reducing the friction between demand and supply and maintaining a healthy balance between these two. We all must have, I don't know how many of you have heard about the Adam's invisible hand. Adam Smith, the famous economist, talked about the invisible hand, which actually it says that any market organically, makes this balance happen organically. So if demand rises, then supply also commensurates with the demand, and so every market will organically come to that beautiful balance between demand and supply. That's the Adam's invisible hand. So now coming to the union budget of 26-27, if you want to decode any budget, what we need to also understand is the macroeconomic theory. What I said was the microeconomics in a nutshell, which governs the market. Now, macroeconomics is what the governments do. How do governments intervene to maintain the economic strength of any country? So, certain indicators are there, which are the vital statistics, like we have the blood pressure and sugar and all of this being measured in a human body. Similarly, for a nation's economy, we need to understand certain factors which had to be under control. Of course, the GDP growth is a very important number. It measures the total value of goods and services produced. So, and it tells us whether the economy is expanding or not. Nominal GDP, the term nominal GDP is GDP at current prices. Today's prices, what is the GDP? And if you look at our budget of 26-27, our economy today as it stands, nominal GDP is about 393 lakh crore rupees. That's the nominal GDP, which is 10% higher than last year. Inflation is the rate at which prices rise, and it tells us how the purchasing power changes, and it shouldn't be too high. Projected as per economic survey is about 4.2% for the coming fiscal year, which is also showing that inflation is under control. Now, fiscal deficit, you must have heard the finance minister, honorable finance minister, talking about fiscal deficit mentioned in her speech several times. So, this is a very crucial indicator. This is the gap between what the government spends and what the government receives. So, receipts versus spending is what is fiscal deficit. If the spending is more than the receipts, so how much can be allowed, how much more can the spending be than the receipts, is what is the fiscal deficit figure. And it also indicates how much the government must borrow, and that also today we've budgeted the next fiscal year, coming fiscal year, it's about 4.3% of the GDP, which is also under control. Now, what is revenue deficit? Revenue expenditure versus capital expenditure. So that is also is required to be understood. Revenue expenditure is the expenditure that is spent on salaries, administration, establishment expenditure. This is the revenue expenditure. And capital expenditure is what we spend on creating assets for the nation, infrastructure, highways, roads. All of these are capital expenditure. And what is revenue deficit? Revenue deficit is when the revenue spending is higher than the revenue income. Now, for example, when take the example of Kerala, the government of Kerala, revenue expenditure is very high, but capex is very low. The capital expenditure is very low, which is not a healthy sign. It's not a sign of a healthy economy, because that means most of the money is going into salaries in the government of Kerala, salaries and consumption expenditure, establishment expenditure. Sorry. But in any government, we need to have any state government or central government, the capital expenditure should be high, more than the revenue expenditure. So today, our at the central government level, it's about 1.5% of the GDP, the revenue expenditure, revenue deficit. That is the difference between the revenue expenditure and the revenue income. Is about 1.5% GDP, is well within control. So, so these are the simple macroeconomic indicators that we need to be mindful of while studying any union budget or studying any economy of any country. Now, there's something called effective capital expenditure also, which includes the grants that are allocated for building of capital assets, the subsidies and grants that are going towards building of national highways or health infrastructure, all of this. So that is, if when it's included, that's called effective capital expenditure. And today in our budget, the capex is about 12.2 lakh crores, and the effective capex is 17.1 lakh crore, which is again a record growth. The capex has been showing in in the union government. The capex has been showing a 23% year on a year increase. That's what is our general macroeconomic fundamentals. So today we are in a very very comfortable position, because our capex is high, our revenue deficit is well within control, inflation is within control. So all of these indicates a very healthy budget and a very healthy macroeconomic scenario. And today, even the World Economic Forum has declared India to be the bright spot in the otherwise very dark, or I would say dim, pessimistic global overview or global economic scenario. We are the North Star, because today our economy is growing at about 7%. 7.2% is what is projected in the coming year. So that's a very high growth rate compared to the global average, which is about 1 to 2%. So India is definitely growing at a higher rate than the globe, and therefore we are looked upon as a North Star of India's economy. So if you look at our journey, how did we achieve all this? It's not been an easy journey. It's been a struggle. Earlier, before this government came in, we had a very centralized planning system where we had every 5 years there were plans made. You must have heard about the famous 5 year plans. So every 5 years, only once in every 5 years, the budget would be revised, or budget would be there would be a review of the budget, whether the spending has been good or not. But today's globe is such a fast paced world, we cannot afford to wait for 5 years to review our economy. So today's economy is a very agile economy where we look at the budget responds to the fast changing global economic scenario. It's an agile economic planning, they call it, which is the Barbell's theory. So, Barbell's theory is where every micro unit is recorded, the economic performance of every micro unit is recorded periodically from time to time. So, how have we achieved the possibility of recording the economic activity of every micro economic activities? Because of the digital platforms that we've been able to bring about by this government. Because of their digital platforms, we'll be able to record the economic activity of every single unit in this country. Every even the small vendor, panwala, also has a Paytm unique code on his shop. So because of the digital platforms, we were able to record this. Earlier we never had data. So all of this, was the informal economy. It wasn't captured into the formal economy, and India's growth was slow, because of which, we had about 90%, more than 90% of our labor was in informal economy at one point of time. But today, our economy has been formalized to a large extent. The digital platforms are available at every doorstep, so we are able to achieve this record and data capture. And data is the new oil, as they say. And today we are having a very data backed, statistics driven, information driven, systems in the country, where we're able to actually give factual representation of our economic growth. And we've also seen how the government stepped up during the times of COVID. We've all seen, we've gone through COVID. COVID has been a completely a shock for every citizen in the country and in the world at large. And even very well developed economies like the USA and the UK were not able to cope up with the stress that the COVID brought about and the shock that the COVID gave to the country. But India stepped up. India was first, of course. We were a little, taken aback, and we were at loss as to how we could cope up with this pandemic. But we did achieve that, resilience, and we were able to produce vaccines at a record speed because of the efficient public-private partnership that we could achieve with the private sector. And we were able to, manufacture these vaccines. And then we also had the Atmanirbhar package. I'm sure all of you remember the Atmanirbhar package. You can put up a thumbs up of whoever remembers the Atmanirbhar package, which was announced in 2020, and then subsequently in 21 and 22. 3 years consecutively, we had the infusion of liquidity into the economy. And most of that infusion was, if you remember, towards MSME support. So, and our MSMEs suffered a lot during the COVID. Yes, definitely. A lot of them went into loss, and they were, had to shut shop. But the government responded through all this liquidity infusion. Then we had the collateral backed, the CGTMSC, that is Credit Guaranteed Trust of, for SMEs, which they were able to produce, give that kind of liquidity infusion. The working capital needs of the MSMEs were being met by the government during that time. And because of all this liquidity infusion, the production of vaccines, and the support to the hospital infrastructure, whatever was possible done by the government, we quickly had a V-shaped recovery. You all must remember the V-shaped recovery again. So that was record. We were able to, emerge out of the dark depths of the COVID and come out, and the economy again, we went on a stable and, a rising curve after the COVID. Then we had a recession again with the global tariffs. I mean, kind of a near recession. As they say in economic, if you look at the world economy at large, a recession is there every about, every 4 years, there is some kind of a recession in the globe. But because of India's stability and because of our economic stability, we're able to counter this kind of recessions, time and again recessions, because of our robust institutions, our very agile economic planning. We're able to kind of navigate this global recessions that come from time to time. So soon after COVID, then we had these tariff wars. We had various wars in the globe. And that also we kind of we were resilient during the wars, during the Russia-Ukraine war and all of these war situations. We were able to go through that without affecting our economy. And then we had the tariffs. We had USA imposing, very high, steep tariffs, which are beyond rational. And so, what did we do? We did not counter, we did not conflict with the USA, but very strategically, we were able to come up with trade deals with various other countries. So, India's economic might, we proved it by shifting the globe from a unipolar world to a multipolar world, or rather a bipolar world to a multipolar world, because we were able to stitch up these trade deals with various other countries, like you've seen from the UAE, the Middle East, so many countries, and the European Union. The last was the European Union, EU FTA, the free trade agreements that were signed with the European Union. And soon after, we were also able to kind of tame the shrew, as they say. We were able to negotiate the deal with the USFA as well. We reduced the tariffs from 50 to 18%. So 50 to 18% was a huge, slump from the 50% to 18%, and this has been strategically achieved. There's a lot of win-win situation here, where we are giving, where the USA is also giving a zero duty on many goods like this, like silk. We are enjoying a zero duty regime, and many other products. We also have a zero duty, zero tariffs imposed by US. And the 18% is also very competitive when we compare with other countries where there is 19%, 25%, etc. Our tariffs are, we've been able to negotiate a 18% tariff. And whatever imports that we're allowing from the US, this is to set, to debunk that myth that we fell prey to the USA, or we are giving them zero duties. This is not the fact. The fact is that we're allowing them to export goods to India, only those goods which add to the value chain in our manufacturing value chain. Those goods which are not available in India, like the semiconductor chips, or of course we had our indigenous semiconductor chip manufactured recently, but small components which are not available in India, only those we are able to, we are allowing USA to export to India. We've protected our the staples, the agricultural staples like rice, wheat, etc. We've protected from imports, but we're allowing certain high end products like berries and all of these which are not available in the Indian market, which are not produced greatly in the Indian market. We're allowing those to be imported. So it's a very, very clear win-win situation, and we're opening up the the Indian economy to a huge market in the USA as well. So it's a great, deal that we have actually stitched up with the USA. So all of this is important to understand the context of the national economy and how we are growing. And we need to reassure every citizen of this country that we are in a very, very healthy, very stable position as far as the economy is concerned, because of our very agile economic planning, because of our reactive policies, as well as proactive and visionary policies that we've been able to kind of stitch over the last so many years. So yeah, we can have a Q&A at the end, or we can keep also asking questions. Not a problem. You can keep putting the questions in the chat box, whatever comes to your mind during this, the session. So coming to the union budget of, or I can take a pause here and take some questions, reactions, whether you're understanding whatever I'm saying, about the economy, whether you've understood it so far, whether you agree with the fact that we are growing, we are North Star in the world. So all of you all can put some reactions, thumbs up, claps, or even a thumbs down if you're not enjoying this session. Please feel free. I will wait for your reactions. You could ask questions also if anyone has any questions. It'll be in the chat box, and we'll address it in the end. And if you have any questions so far. Okay, so we'll move on then. You can keep on posting your questions as and when the doubt comes to your mind. And so coming to the 26-27 union budget, so this budget is anchored on three kartavyas, or three duties that the government recognizes to be done. Although we have fulfilled a lot of our duties so far, the government has fulfilled many of its duties. We have been able to, the first NDA government, if you see, our when the government took over, there was the coverage of basic services was minimal, or maybe halfway up, not even halfway up the mark in terms of water supply, or in terms of the access to basic amenities, roads, all of these, power. So we were, much of our country was even in darkness during that time. Sanitation facilities, access to sanitation was very low during that time. But so the NDA one focused on saturation of basic amenities at the Grama Panchayat level. That was Antyodaya. That was the concept of Antyodaya, where we were trying to provide every person living in every local body access to basic services, saturating every Grama Panchayat with the basic services. So that was the focus of the first NDA government in provision of basic infrastructure. So while we were doing the end of the first regime by 2019 or so, the realization came that just focusing on infrastructure will not do. We'll also have to capacitate our citizens with skilling so that they are capable of taking up economic activities, strengthening their potential for livelihood, which is very important. Even famous economists like Amartya Sen, who is supposedly aligned to the left, Jean Dries, has also mentioned about the true capacity building of any nation happens when we capacitate every citizen with livelihood skills, and not just provide them income. So which many of the welfare economies, they focus just on giving them government jobs which give them some income at the end of the month, but not building that not honing that spirit of enterprise in the citizen, not providing the skills required to create enterprises. So today we've moved from a job seeker kind of ethos to a job giver ethos. That is what the youth today have the confidence of, that they can create jobs. They can, we have very very young even students studying in the 12th standard becoming startup heroes of today. And we've moved on to becoming the startup hub of the world, the largest, one of the leading startup hubs of the world, because of the infusion of skilling that was given at a very early stage. And so with that, the first phase of skilling was very basic, on mobile repairing through the Deen Dayal Kaushal Vikas Yojana, urban and rural. We were trying to skill people with basic abilities like repairing the mobiles and all of those things. But later on, the skilling is, of course, very, very high end skilling in terms of AI. We're talking about space. We're talking about all of these skillings. That is semiconductor chips. We've also done our, indigenously manufactured chip has come out last year, 25, the Vikram 32. So all of this are the way the skill, focus of the skilling of the government has been evolving from time to time. So, like the Maslow's hierarchy theory, everybody would have heard, from the basic you move to the higher order needs. So that's what this government did, but we didn't have that kind of luxury to wait for the basic amenities to be filled, and then you go to economic and then to other higher order needs. So that was happening simultaneously. So the second phase of the government focused on providing all of these skills, and then the infrastructure push, which we were able to do through all the railways, the ports. We still continue to do so, modernization of railways. All of this was happening in the second phase. And now the third phase, we are focusing on, very high order needs, like I mentioned about the AI, semiconductors, space missions, and all of this is what we are focusing on. And this budget, now coming to this union budget 26-27, we see that continuity, the stability is continuing, that growth curve is continuing, and the focus of the government remains on providing skilling to the youth, while promoting MSMEs, while also promoting the manufacturing sector, but also seeing that every citizen's needs are met and every citizen has equal participation opportunities. Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. So there are three kartavyas, as we said, three national duties. The first kartavya being to accelerate and sustain economic growth by enhancing productivity and competitiveness and building resilience to global dynamics. Kartavya 2 is to fulfill aspirations of our people and build their capacities. And 3 is to ensure that every family, community, region, and sector has access to resources, amenities, and opportunities for meaningful participation. So under Kartavya 1, we are focusing on growth. The budget focuses on growth, which is manufacturing through a seven-tier strategic initiative. One is through the Biopharma Shakti Mission, where about 10,000 crore has been allocated for the Biopharma Shakti Mission. The Semiconductor 2.0 mission, we plan to continue the journey from Vikram chip, the indigenous chip, to moving towards a mission that expands to full supply chain capabilities in semiconductors. There's a lot of focus on electronics manufacturing. About 40,000 crore support is there for electronics manufacturing, which will give rise to huge opportunities in the ancillary services like MSMEs and various other smaller, components in the value chain. And then, of course, rare earth corridors are being expanded and developed basically, because critical minerals is a huge focus of this government also, to hone our critical minerals, uh, including in Kerala. Then, of course, there is a mention of chemical parks, high tech tool rooms, and capital goods programs has been mentioned. Textile modernization also receives quite a lot of emphasis in this budget. There's a revival of clusters. Supply side strengthening at scale is happening in the textile manufacturing sector. MSMEs continue to receive a huge allocation in this budget as well. It's never neglected. Every year in the budget, we find a mention for the MSMEs, and it's a huge, rising sunrise sector, so to speak, of this economy, MSMEs. MSMEs receive about 10,000 crore of growth fund, plus additional equity and liquidity support in this budget. Then energy transition. Now, energy transition and clean energy has been a big focus of this government from the beginning. We talk of greening of our economy, we talk of greening of our MSMEs. We are trying to move from a fossil fuel based economy to a non fossil fuel based economy, so that we contribute to a cleaner planet. And that commitment has been very strong in our government, and we don't compromise. We're not compromising on that, despite all global powers like the USA withdrawing from this renewable energy commitments. We stuck to the commitments, and we have surpassed our nationally determined commitments in the Paris Agreement on production of renewable energy and clean energy. So in that context, this time we have an announcement of 20,000 crore for carbon capture and decarbonization, which is a very important, allocation that is given, because climate change. If you read about global economics and global economic theory, climate change is a big. It has a huge influence on any economy, impact on the economy. So we are talking about trying to make a market out of this, the carbon emissions that are there in the economy. It was attempted in the first Kyoto Protocol long back, but and in the many governments in India also tried to bring this about into fruition, but it did not succeed. But this time in this government, we have a lot of focus on greening and on carbon markets, and so that's evolved now. It's matured now, and we have another 20,000 crore going in for carbon capture and decarbonization. Along with this, we also have a tax incentive for nuclear power projects, especially those which are done on a public-private partnership mode, because nuclear energy is also clean energy. So the focus is clear. It's towards cleaning. Towards clean, green energy and greening of our economy. Then Kartavya 2, that is building people's capacity. So we have a lot of allocation on health, education, skills. 1 lakh allied health professionals we are promoting in this budget over the next 5 years. And around 1.5 lakh caregivers. There's a caregivers also to be trained is a focus of this government in the coming years. 1.5 lakh caregivers, because very important for an economy like Kerala, for a state like Kerala, where the demographic dividend is on the other side of the spectrum, where we have a lot of old people staying here above 60. So caregiver is a very important parameter, or very important sector in a state like Kerala. So it's going to be a big gain for Kerala. And we are also talking about 5 regional medical hubs, then 3 All India Institutes of Ayurveda. So Ayurveda and yoga has also been a very important focus of this government. So we are coming out with 3 All India Institutes of Ayurveda. And there's going to be a 50% expansion in emergency and trauma care capacity in district hospitals. So that is, that penetration is important to have health penetrating to our districts and to our blocks and to our villages. So that kind of trickling down has to happen, and we need to make our districts and our villages self-sufficient in terms of healthcare. So this announcement goes in that direction, where we are trying to enhance the capacity of emergency and trauma care by 50%. And then education. Education also receives a big boost through 5 university townships, and a girls' hostel in every district has found a mention in this budget. And along with all of this, there is also a lot of tax incentives and duty-free concessions given. I'll come to that. That's part B of the budget. Now, coming to the third kartavya, which is about Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. In this, we have tourism being focused as something which is going to be, reaching every citizen or reaching the last mile in terms of economic growth. So there's a National Institute of Hospitality going to come up. Then 10,000 guides to be trained across major sites. So that's again an important announcement for states like Kerala and Goa, where there's a lot of focus on tourism. The fisheries value chain is also being strengthened through fish farmer producer organization. The farmer producer organizations, that was a mission that was run by the government over the last so many years, is very successful mission. FPOs and the self-help groups becoming FPOs, and that's become a huge economic churning activity across our districts and villages. Now we're talking about extending that to the fishery sector as well. Financial participation. Now, financial participation is also an important aspect, and the banking sector becoming very robust in this government. Initially, we had, we infused a lot of focus on the banking sector by giving them a lot of targets under the Mudra Yojana, and a lot of them were stressed because of the NPAs, non-performing assets, and they were very worried about the banking sector. But that also has been, they've been able to overcome that, and now it's a very healthy banking sector, robust banking sector that we have in India today. So a high-level committee on banking for Viksit Bharat has also been announced, as you all must have heard and read about the announcement in high-level banking for Viksit Bharat. Then a lot of, the part B. The part B is the oil for the so to speak, in the machinery of manufacturing announcements. That is the tax incentive. So there are a lot of duty concessions, tax incentives being given in this budget. There's lower TCS for education and medical remittances. Then cancer medicines, there is also a lot of import concessions on cancer medicines, and also for simpler tedious rules for tax relief for accident compensation interest, simpler tedious rules for manpower supply. All of these are part of the announcements in this budget. So for businesses, the message is clear. India wants to be a trusted, low friction tax jurisdiction. Safe harbor rules are also being promoted in this budget. Then we also have a better cooperative tax regime is also being announced in this budget, that the details will have to follow on how they're going to implement this cooperative tax regime structure. And again, on customs, the system is being rewired. There is digital single window, trusted trader model, and AI-based risk assessment is also being introduced in the customs sector, and so on and so forth. So we have also have targeted tariff cuts for green tech. As I mentioned, the greening is an important focus. So for green tech also, there is targeted tariff cuts. On electronics, aviation, and nuclear equipment, there is a lot of tariff cuts that's going to be seen in coming year. And also citizen-facing customs relief also is important. So that's also being brought about. Like we had the faceless, mechanisms in the GST implementation. Similarly, we're going to be expanding that to customs as well. So all of these are part B, which removes the friction. Part A builds the capacity, while part B removes the friction. That's how we have to look at this entire budget. And of course, Kerala benefits largely because I'm talking from Cochin, Kerala. So my state, how does my state benefit from this budget? Hugely. I think what's in it for Kerala? Everything is in it for Kerala. If we are proactive and we're able to leverage in all of these announcements and proactively approach the national government for all of these projects. So, like, be it the rare earth corridors, the MSME support, there's a lot of focus on coconut value chains, cashew and cocoa exports, tourism and trekking initiatives. The strengthening of the fishery sector will also gain, Kerala will gain heavily through that. Then, alongside the major national infrastructure investments already underway, all of these measures will give Kerala direct state stake in the growth agenda. Just to reflect on how much has been done for Kerala, there's been about a 30,000 crore support has been what Kerala has received in the last 5 years through the central government and centrally sponsored schemes. Apart from that, about 1.6 lakh crore has been the infusion through tax devolutions and through revenue deficit grants that has been given to Kerala already. And finance ministers also announced the 16th Finance Commission. They've accepted all the conditions, and that 40% mark of devolutions to states remain. So I think the state support also is about 1.8 lakh crores in this budget. So that's also a huge infusion of money. So a lot of things that Kerala or even any other state will gain from this budget. So this is not a balancing budget. This is a capacity building budget and a competitiveness budget, a future preparing budget. And when national spending turns into national investment, growth turns into destiny. And this budget is designed to make that destiny happen. And which is that destiny? That's Viksit Bharat 2047. So I'll end my session with this. Thank you, Namaskar, Jai Hind, and welcome any questions, comments, and reactions from the audience. So yeah, so you can post your questions if anybody has any questions. Yeah. So what all factors made? Yeah, I can see that. May turn table the U.S. policy. Yes. So yeah, the U.S. India trade deal, as I had mentioned, we did not actually relent initially. We did not subscribe to the 50% tariff hike, and we refused to do any trade exchange with the USA, and we circumvented that by undertaking trade deals with other countries. And then that was a very good strategy. But the US relented because they understood that it's a huge market that they are, kind of losing out on if we do not have a tie up with India. And that's how they reduced the tariffs to 18%. So that's a huge win-win for us. As I mentioned about in great detail about the US India trade deal, it's a win-win situation where a lot of we are enjoying zero duty on many products that we have an edge on, like silk and all of these products. We are enjoying a zero duty there as well. And 18% is very competitive compared to other countries. Like China is about 25% is what the tariffs imposed on China by USA, and various other countries about 18 to 19%, and ours is the lowest at 18%. So that way it's a huge win-win situation, and it's a huge market there. More than 42 billion USD is the market that we are tapping into, billion dollars, by entering to a trade deal with the US. So that's how we've been able to negotiate this trade deal. And so it's not a turntable. It's something that has been worked upon and negotiated. And therefore, why should we miss out on such a huge economy, which is also a gain for India? So I think there are no more questions. So anybody has any more questions can please raise the questions. Thank you. So I think then we can end this session, and thank you everybody for joining in. And we will share the recording of this to everybody and to a larger audience as well. And next time we'll try to make it more interactive. We'll maybe have another interactive platform, more than a YouTube, perhaps, kind of a Zoom session would be more useful. So thank you everybody.